Will Joe Burrow be under center week one? And who we think will make the Bengals 53-man roster? Coming up next on the Wincinnati podcast.
It's an exciting time to be a Bengals fan.
I'm AC.
We got a special show as always.
The voice of the Bengals. Dan Ford, Willie Anderson, Corey Dillon.
The name of this thing is called Wincinnati, and I'm not going to stop.
Talk to us about that roller coaster season.
I'm still going to give you the same AJ.
I'm going to work as hard as I can to be the best.
Always working ever since I met y'all, boy.
I got to get you a top 5 receiver.
Better, man. It was good.
Watch out for us.
Well, welcome to the Cincinnati podcast. We are headed into a new season, so we hit you with the new intro. Hope you guys like that. No Zim tonight. Zim's out, has some appointments. Zim, we hope you're feeling better. But Ace is with me. Sovah here. Ace, how you doing? How you enjoying your weekend, man?
Doing good, bro. Got to actually watch the Bengals over the weekend. Rewatched a little bit of the first quarter. Son had a game this weekend, so that was always fun. But ready to get back into the swing of things. The next game is going to be a real one. No more fake games. No more, Ravens titles. They love the preseason. So ready for that regular season, bro. How about yourself?
Yeah, man, it was fun after finally that we don't have to hear about that streak. Now they have a losing streak on the back end of that 2 games preseason. We'll see how much that matters for anything. But yeah, I had a chance to watch the game last night. We'll obviously talk about that a little later on the show. It's just kind of been a lot of inconsistent play over the course of the preseason, and we haven't seen hardly any starters, so you just kind of have to take that with a grain of salt. But it just hasn't done nothing to dim my excitement for the season. I'm still really, really, really pumped. How do you think things are gonna play out early on? I mean, we'll get into the Joe Burrow conversation. I know that's the big thing, but are you still? I mean, this didn't dampen your expectations at all, right? Like you're still
not. I'm almost taking the Zach Taylor approach to preseason now. Like this is, normal for us now. Zach Taylor doesn't really care much about the preseason, right? Like all of the stock really, especially when you go to an AFC divisional championship twice in a row, Super Bowl the year before that, the big picture is really what I'm looking at. So, for me, and I think for most Bengals fans and Zach Taylor, it's more of looking at the depth of the roster, figuring out how those guys stack up against the rest of the league, because we've been a team that's been hit with a lot of these injuries. So positions that I was looking at was, backup offensive linemen for obvious purposes, backup running backs. What does the depth at receiver look like? Because these were things that hurt us against the Chiefs. Chris Jones was able to do his thing. And then we also talk about Tyler Boyd going down. We saw T. Higgins go down. We saw Jamar Chase go down. So seeing what the guys behind those guys look like was definitely a key for me. So for me, I didn't really care about the win or loss record. It was how do these guys perform? And then backup quarterback, right, with Joe Burrow being out, what does that look like now that Brandon Allen is going?
Yeah, so everything we're going to get to on the show today is we will go over the loss last night, 21-19 to the Commanders. But more importantly, we'll talk about the performances from that game, the things that stood out to us. There were still things to be excited about. There were still plays being made that, really are something to really get you excited and hype for in the season as the regular season approaches. We will also it's cut down season. It's cut down time. The Bengals have to be at 53 by Tuesday. So we will project what we think the Bengals are going to do as the best 53 men to go into the season week one. And speaking of week one, it's the question we've all had on our minds since the first week of camp when Burrow went down with the calf strain. I know there have been signs that he worked out before the game in Cincy and he looked good there. We still haven't seen him in practice. Will Joe Burrow be under center week one? We will talk about that and so much more coming up next. All right, Ace. First things first here. The first thing I want to talk about is last night's loss to the Commanders. But, we're not dwelling on the final score here. I think if there's one guy who stood out last night and has been a theme through 3 games is our guy, Andre Iosivas, Yoshi. We love him. We've had him on the show, friend of the show. I feel like he is the go-to guy at the start of every single game, and it was no different last night. What did you think about his performance?
Yeah, I thought it was super impressive. The fact that this guy was deemed by most people as being slightly raw, I think him coming in and performing the way that he did was admirable. I personally didn't believe that he was a raw prospect after cutting the tape on. Obviously, he played against the small school prospects in that competition. But obviously, this guy showed that he belongs here. I mean, this guy is routing people up, catching touchdowns, getting third down targets. I don't know what else you need to see from this kid to know that he's ready to play NFL ball. I mean, he's an Ivy League kid. That means that he's got the right wires upstairs in terms of learning and soaking it in. And honestly, this is kind of what I kind of expected from him in between those 2 receivers. Obviously, Charlie Jones was the other guy that was taken, and a lot of people kind of talked about him. But honestly, Charlie Jones only actually got to play wide receiver for 1 season after being mostly a special teamer. So Andre actually had more experience if you're just talking about from playing the receiver position itself. And a guy with his size, athleticism, that's always going to translate to the league. And the confidence that he had, I think even when we interviewed him, kind of showed that. But their belief in Yoshi has kind of shined throughout this offseason. And I think he's been obviously the MVP of the preseason. Out of all of those games, I think he's always made a play. He's always contributed, whether the Bengals won, whether they lost or tied, Yoshi always was making plays. So to see him do that was definitely satisfying. And I think it makes it painfully clear that he's wide receiver 5. What were your thoughts on Yoshi's performance?
I mean, that's hard to argue. I mean, look at how he plays this back shoulder throw. I mean, the guy's still all over him. I mean, we've seen this same route. I mean, they've thrown this exact ball to him, I think, every single week. And he's come down with, if most of them, if not all of them. He just reminds me of like a young T. Higgins. I know, like, obviously the pedigree's not there and the production and everything, but like just a really big guy who's way more athletic than you would think he would be at that size. And I think, I think he kind of takes a little bit of a knock because of the school he played at, the program, being a Princeton guy, like not being a Power 5 school or Power 5 coming from a big conference. But man, like all I've seen him do in practice and all I've seen him do in games are burn guys, for whether it's for, big catches downfield or touchdowns. I mean, the touchdown last night, I mean, you don't get more wide open than he was on this play. And we'll show you this here in a second. But, he just makes every time the ball's in the air, like I don't have any question that he's going to come down with it. I mean, the ball, like that throw looks like it might head into the stands, and all of a sudden you got
that throw was nasty. That throw was nasty.
On the back end, right?
I heard the excuse like, "Oh, maybe I thought someone else was there." No, it was just a bad pass, bro. It's just a bad pass, but he comes down with it. And another thing that you kind of mentioned, outside of just him catching the touchdowns, the run after the catch ability, we saw that in one of his first games, right? Like, and I just felt like the consistency of Yoshi just built every single game that he was in there on. Welcome to the league. This kid is definitely going to be a factor. I think Joe Burrow's watching this, licking his chops, ready to get Yoshi in there on 5 wide kind of assignment.
I saw your tweet about going empty with him.
For sure. I mean, think about this, man. We've had Mike Thomas, on those kind of go routes for years, just dropping them in the end zone. Imagine if that's Yoshi, right? It wasn't a bunch of plays, but, Mike Thomas would get in for maybe, 5-6 snaps, and sometimes he would get targeted and he just wouldn't be able to make the play. So I think Yoshi can definitely be a factor and could be someone that can step up if there is an injury or if there's an opportunity that's available. I think he can catch some guys slipping for sure.
Another rookie that we have to highlight who got a lot of run last night, literally and figuratively, was Chase Brown. What did you think about how he did when his number was called several times?
Yeah. I mean, I think I was pretty critical on Chase Brown. I called him a loser on the last episode. He was a winner. He was a big time winner in this game. You could tell that this guy was motivated. Chris Evans didn't even take a snap in this game. So this guy has to know, I've got something to prove. I thought that he was extremely explosive, especially when it came to runs up the middle. I thought that he was actually being the guy that we thought that he was when he got drafted. I was really high on Chase Brown. He had a really high prime score. The one thing that I will say, though, about Chase Brown that nobody's really talking about, even though he may have struggled in some departments, the big thing was ball security. He didn't have any fumbles through this entire preseason. And so I thought that he was able to showcase his skills. Obviously, they had the screen game. That wasn't a great play. Not that that was any fault of his own. But obviously he's been able to show that he can be an asset in the passing game with one of those screens in the preseason. And then in this game, he just really showed what he can do as a north and south runner. And it was very explosive, makes me feel very confident for what the Bengals have. And I think the running back room really impressed this offseason. A lot of people this offseason were talking about, hey, let's sign Zeke. Let's bring in this old wash guy, or let's bring in another guy from somewhere else. Like James Robinson probably would have been a guy that people would have been entertaining, being that he just got recently cut. I think seeing these guys play, we know that Chris Evans and Chase Brown, if there is any kind of issue with Mixon needing to miss time, I think we know that this running back group is going to be in good hands with Chase Brown. So shout out to Chase Brown. I'm not against giving people their flowers when they prove me wrong. So, I thought that he didn't play the best last game, but this game, it was like night and day. This is the Chase Brown that I expected to see. And I think that's what the Bengals expected to see. So seeing him run like that definitely was super impressive. What about you? How did you feel about Chase Brown?
Yeah, I liked some of his vision and cutback ability. We're still, we all love to see the big home run runs where guys are going, 50 plus. But what he did was there weren't a lot of negative plays. He was falling forward. He was getting some yards after contact, and sometimes that's just all your offense needs. Some of these running backs that came out and some of these smaller guys. Yeah, man, they can run like the 4.40 and they can hit you for 80 in the blink of an eye. But if you have 10 carries before that average 2.5 yards per carry because you're getting hit at the line of scrimmage or you're losing yards, it's harder to get to those. So you want to be able to do both. And I think there's some home run potential, but I think this is kind of his lane, like, the 5-6 yards in a cloud of dust type runs, and there's nothing wrong with that. Those move the chains, those kill the clock, those give you victories. So I'm excited. I know he had kind of a mixed bag against Atlanta, maybe, and that's maybe being a little nice. But he show improved in the nation's capital last night. Diddy wants to know, and I'll ask you, Ace, how's your arm? We need a backup quarterback.
I mean, honestly, man, I think at this point we take anybody out there. I think we beg for Brandon Allen back the way that this kind of looked. My deep ball, though, Diddy, is not good, pretty nasty. I probably would have thrown a Jake Browning type of pass there if we were sitting on the 1 yard line. So, I might be able to scramble a little bit, but I think that's it. But, for me, the backup QB position has just been horrible, man. Like Jake Browning has been mid. Like he's been better than Trevor Siemian, but that's still mid. You still kind of see the deficiencies, which I was a big Browning guy. And then Reed Sennett looked like the best quarterback yesterday. He at least threw a touchdown, a deep ball touchdown, which I feel like we haven't seen this entire preseason, it seems like. But the backup QB situation, which we'll talk about later in the show, is just pretty ugly.
Yeah, I think I could give you that 15-yard out, maybe opposite hash. I might be able to give you that, but that's about it. That's about the extent of it. Another guy to be excited about on the offensive side of the ball, Tanner Hudson. I don't think he's not looking to play tight. He's not looking to be the tight end one, obviously, but man, he made a real strong case And I don't know what Drew Sample gives you better than Tanner Hudson, maybe some blocking, but I feel like Sample came out as this like highly touted blocking tight end. And I just haven't seen it. I don't think it's like ever translated into a game. But man, Tanner Hudson showed some serious athleticism last night. And I think he's looking like a lock for this team.
I mean, I hope so. Like we kind of talked about looking at the depth, right? Another one of those questions was tight end. Irv Smith didn't even play this preseason, so you expected to see any guy step up, and none of them honestly did. Like I saw Drew Sample make a catch, get a first down. That was about it. Mitchell Wilcox, he's back at training camp just because he missed a whole bunch of time, so he didn't really get a chance to really shine. Devin Asiasi has shown me absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. The only tight end this entire preseason, even with this guy missing one with a concussion, has been Tanner Hudson. Tanner Hudson, to me, right now, looks like tight end too. I mean, the tight end room is that bad after Irv Smith that nobody else was sticking out. This guy looks like a guy that can make plays. And I'm even combining that not only with his preseason play, but the training camp as well. I remember when he first got on my radar, I saw him making plays against the starting safeties. And I'm like, man, who is number 87? Like, is this Gronk? Is this Bengals Gronk over here making plays on the starters? Like, and then it translated into the game. So not only were we seeing him do his thing in camp, he also was doing his thing in these games. Definitely was a weapon. Almost had a touchdown too. Like if he wasn't double teamed on that touchdown pass that got deflected out, he probably ends this game with a touchdown pass as well. I think that this guy deserves a legit shot. I think that he should be on this roster. I think he's been the most consistent. I think he's shown that he can be a weapon. I didn't really pay attention to the blocking, honestly, but seeing him as a weapon, I think this guy definitely has some potential. Seeing him with like Joey B or something like that, a guy that can catch something up in the seams, a guy that can beat cover two, especially with that two-man high look. I think he is a guy that could beat the two high shell and do some things. I hope that he makes it. If he doesn't make it to the roster, they have to put him on the practice squad. Hopefully he can be Mitchell Wilcox 2.0, because remember, Mitchell Wilcox started on the practice squad, worked his way up to the active roster. I think it would just be a mistake to keep a guy like Devin Asiasi over him. It just really would be a mistake, in my opinion.
Yeah, I know we'll get to this later when we break down and project the 53, but I would take Wilcox and Hudson ahead of Asiasi and Sample. Like I will put them in that order, in that race. And if we're being honest here and honest with ourselves, with Irv, there's some injury history that he's a really nice player and electric at times when he is healthy. Just for whatever reason, he hasn't, always been the healthiest guy. So Tanner Hudson looks like the next closest thing to a weapon at that position after Irv Smith, and gives you some athleticism and a little bit of a downfield threat, can attack the seams. I mean, we're seeing him here with some run after the catch and, breaking tackles. I think he is far and away the number 2 guy on this roster and gives them the most in case of an injury to Irv Smith, in my opinion.
Yeah, you got to have insurance, man. I mean, we all drive cars and stuff like that. Like Irv Smith is that car, but you got to insure. You got to have something outside of that because, unless you plan on playing empty the entire game with a whole bunch of receivers, you're going to need some tight ends. I know that we don't feature the tight end much, but, Hayden Hurst, having a guy like that, be able to be a red zone target, especially when these teams try to double Jamar Chase and T. Higgins at the same time, like they did last year. You got to have a tight end that's an actual target that teams are actually afraid of. And Tanner Hudson might be a guy that may not be on their radar. So he might be a guy that could surprise, end up wide open. And with the tight end position, like I know a lot of people go off of, draft position and stuff like that. There's a ton of guys like Darren Waller and guys that were undrafted, played other positions and had, not your typical route to the league to become a starter. Jimmy Graham's another one. I mean, so I wouldn't mind giving this guy a shot. I know a lot of people may say, oh, he's been on 3 or 4 teams. This guy deserves to make this team, man. Yeah. Honestly.
Absolutely. Last night we saw Evan McPherson crush one from 58, and it's good to see the 2021 version of Evan McPherson back. I know he was really good last year, but struggled with at times. 8 for 8 in the preseason has been perfect. I'm glad to see the real Money Mac back. How much do you think that's going to lift this team?
Yeah, I mean, I think with Money Mac, it was so much for him his rookie season because my wife actually went to the Beyonce concert in Tampa, and there was a guy wearing a Evan McPherson jersey. She was like, he had a Bengals jersey on. I said, which one? McPherson? Even my wife doesn't even really watch football. She knows who Evan McPherson is. So, his stardom just reached a super high level after that Super Bowl. I mean, he was a kicker that sent us there. You even had ops and spaces saying that, Joe Burrow needed Evan McPherson. So there was a lot of pressure with that. There was a lot of fame. Obviously, people would see him out on the streets, and he kind of talked about it, right? It was a little overwhelming for him. I think now that he's in year 3, he's settled in. I think he's mentally in the right place. I think he knows that he has the confidence of, the top 5 NFL kicker. I don't have a problem saying this, top 5 NFL kicker that I feel like he is. This guy's a weapon. They tried to say that Cade York was going to be the next McPherson. Like, how did that go? It didn't go well for them in the preseason at all. Evan McPherson, I think he's in the right headspace. I think he realizes that he's a weapon for this team. And I think that he's going to continue to have that success. And I think going through those struggles only helped him get better as the season went on, and definitely has had an improvement this offseason for sure.
Well, Joe Burrow's been called a wide receiver merchant, a defense merchant. Why not a clutch kicker merchant? Why don't we just throw all of Joe Burrow's success on the rest of the roster? And when Brad Robbins has a great year right here, we'll figure out a way that Brad Robbins got him the ball back. Like, there, it just never ends. But super excited for Evan McPherson. Love that guy, and really looking forward to his 2023 season. We'll see how that goes. A guy who's going to slowly, unfortunately, after last night, come into the 2023 season is defensive end Joseph Ossai, who injured an ankle last night. Initial reports say that it's hopeful that it's just an ankle sprain, as Zach Taylor said. No real news on that yet, but if it's something that could linger, there's a chance we could see him on a IR recall or a PUP list in his future. I know they drafted a defensive end with the first overall pick.
Yeah.
Do they have the depth to sort of absorb a loss like this for a few weeks, Ace, in your opinion?
I do think that that's why you drafted Myles Murphy in the event that something like this happened, to add depth to the position, right? I think Ossai should be okay. I think, I'm not speaking off of any inside information. I would just assume that it's like precautionary. Obviously, you got a week 1 matchup against the Browns where you kind of want to have him there. In the event that he does miss it, though, you do have an opportunity with Myles Murphy to step up and give him some of those snaps. You also had a guy that took a snap in Cam Sample that makes you feel a lot more confident in that situation. And obviously you have Hubbard and Hendrickson is going to be fully 100% healthy. So Ossai is huge. I thought that the game before this, he had an amazing game. Obviously, he had the interception. Obviously, he's ready to get back on the field. But you do have to, take it slowly and think about the big picture. But hopefully, if it is just an ankle sprain, and hopefully not a severe ankle sprain, maybe a mild one, he can be back. Because I believe Joe Mixon, obviously they play 2 different positions, but there was a time where Joe Mixon was thought to miss a game or something like that. He actually ended up playing. I think Pac-Man, that also happened to him at one point. Mm-hmm. So hopefully it's a minor kind of thing, and this gives the opportunity for him to return, or for Myles Murphy to get those snaps, which he needs. Myles Murphy needs snaps. He needs to get used to the NFL. He's extremely athletic. He's actually somewhat similar in position to where Ossai was coming in. A lot of people forget Ossai didn't have a lot of pass rush moves. He was a converted kind of outside linebacker to edge rusher, but clearly the athleticism translated. And I think that Myles Murphy is a guy that could be in for a similar type performance with relying off of that athletic ability.
Yeah, Osai's a big motor guy. Like some of his best highlights coming out were him chasing down plays from the backside and quarterbacks
That's
rolling out.
why the Pat Mahomes play wasn't surprising for me because he's a guy that plays to the whistle. And
Mhm.
obviously people got on him about that. I'm not mad about that. I'd rather a guy play through the whistle than to give up and let a play end up going forward. Obviously, it was a mistake, and I think he's learned from that. But I don't want him to take away from that tenacity that he plays with because that's what makes him so great.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure he saw, a chance at a hobbled Mahomes and saw a little blood in the water and was just going to go for it right there. And just,
Yeah.
it was what it was, and it led to what it did. And we move on. And speaking of moving on, let's move on to the next topic. We talked about this winless preseason. I know we hit on it a little bit in the intro to the show, but I want your definitive opinion here. I want you to ease the minds of Bengals fans that are tuning in. Is a winless preseason any cause for concern?
No, it's not a cause for concern. Joe Burrow never played. Jamar Chase didn't touch the field. Neither did T. Higgins. Neither did Tyler Boyd. Neither did 95% of the starters. So would I be worried about, the backups playing against some teams that had starters in? No. I actually feel more confident in certain positions. I don't feel confident about the backup quarterback. So is that a cause for concern? Sure. Like the backup quarterbacks didn't show us much, but wins and losses in a preseason where you only played your defensive starters literally like one drive in 3 games. No, I'm not worried about a winless preseason because what we're worried about is December, January, and hopefully February. So I'm not worried about what's happening in August before the season even starts. August wins mean absolutely nothing.
Yeah, the Detroit Lions went undefeated the year that they went 0-16 in the regular season. The Commanders went 3-0 this year. And maybe they'll prove us wrong, but I don't think anyone has projected the Commanders to win the NFC East, much less the Super Bowl. So,
preseason to tell you that Kenny Pickett's Peyton Manning now. Five possessions, 5 touchdowns, preseason stats. This is nasty. Ryan.
Yeah, it all gets settled in 2 weeks. 2 weeks from today, we have real Bengals football, and I couldn't be more excited. But before we get to that, we have to now project the 53-man roster for the Bengals. They have to be down to 53 by Tuesday. So we are going to do our own look at what we think they are going to do. And then we'll see how close we are once final roster cuts come around. Let's start with quarterback, Ace. I think the first one is very obvious for obvious reasons.
Yeah, Joe Burrow.
Where do you think they go at QB2? And do you think they carry QB3 this year?
Oh man. So I think that there's been a new change where QB3 doesn't count against the roster or something like that. There was something passed where they can keep, 3 quarterbacks in that emergency kind of slot. I'm gonna throw up in my mouth when I say
I think what happens is they count against the 53-man roster, but on game day inactives, they do not. The third quarterback does not count as.
Oh goodness! All right. I'm literally hoping that there's, a Will Greer or something out there that they can pivot to.
Yeah, we will get to that later on in the show. For potential free agents that can improve this roster. But as we're looking at the current players we have, who's QB2?
As much as I want to say Jake Browning, my gut tells me that they're still going to side with Trevor Siemian simply based off of the experience, unless they find someone else out there. I can't believe I'm saying it because he played horrible. But, they're going to say, oh, he wasn't with the starters. Oh, he's actually done things. He can actually talk to Joe about stuff. Whereas I don't think Jake Brown is going to be able to offer anything to Burrow from like a film watching perspective. So unfortunately, it's probably Siemian. I think
Why don't we put
I'm going to
Brown,
put Browning in there
let's put
too.
Browning on there, and at the end, if we need to cut another player to get down to
With the caveat that they could replace one or two of those guys with somebody that's out there that they might like. So let's go with running backs. I think that they keep 4.
Okay,
So obviously Joe Mixon. I think you keep
Evans.
Chris Evans, definitely Williams, and I think the 4th is Chase Brown. All right, now
So
this is where it gets interesting.
That's really going on a lot. Like Travion hasn't shown anything in the preseason and has been injured through most of camp.
They love Travion. They love Travion. I think it goes back to Zach Taylor in his days in the SEC. Him having that relationship. I mean, I think Travion's going to make it.
Okay. All right. Tight end. You don't have to necessarily give me a number at first, but the names that you think, obviously
Irv Smith. They're going to probably keep Drew Sample.
Was our guy.
If it were me, I would say Hudson. But I think that they keep Mitchell Wilcox
over Hudson.
Keep Wilcox over Hudson, and I don't think that I don't see them keeping 4 tight ends.
Man, I mean, he's put on some tape, so I don't think. I
think Hudson could be on the practice squad, like as that guy that comes up. I think Mitchell Wilcox. They've seen him. Drew Sample. They feel like he knows the system, can be a blocker. Unfortunately, I would love Tanner Hudson to be there. Obviously, at receiver, we're keeping the Migos. I mean, they're not getting cut. The NFL wants us to cut one of them. Then you also have Trenton Irwin. Then you also have Yoshi. And you also have, obviously, Chuck Sizzle, Charlie Jones. The interesting thing for me is, do they keep Morgan Stanley? A lot of people are like, or Stanley Morgan, the guy that's the financial institution. I'm gonna just start calling him the financial institution.
He's their specialty ace. Why don't we put him on here? And if we need to,
I don't think he makes it, bro. I don't think he makes it.
You don't think Stanley Morgan? You think this is the year?
I don't think he makes it. I think that this is the year that they possibly go in a different direction. I know Zim would argue me to death on this. So actually, you know what? Let's keep Stanley Morgan in just for Zim, because I know if Zim was here, he would be like, "What? They're definitely keeping Stanley Morgan."
So 7.
We'll come back to that, though. We'll come back to that.
Sure. Right. Left tackle is obviously an easy one at the starter position.
Orlando Brown. I don't know what Dante Smith's injury is, so I'm not quite sure on that. Seems like they like Jackson Carman backing up that position. So we got Carman there. It's really tough between Deontay and Hakeem Adeniji, which one that they would like there. I'm going to go with those two for now at left tackle.
Okay. Left guard. Starter, Volson.
They're going to keep Cordell Volson. Max Sharping, I think, has bounced between backup center and left guard.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's there. Let's see.
Trey Hill. Does Trey Hill do it? Is this the year that Trey Hill finally gets cut? Had a bad.
Trey Hill's getting cut, bro. I think Trey Hill's getting cut. I think them putting Sharping at backup center spoke volumes. I didn't see anything from Trey Hill at all in this offseason to make me say he should make the roster. I would think Hakeem Adeniji would have a better shot at making the roster than Trey Hill at this point.
Hope so.
So at center, let's go with Ted Karras. Obviously, with the caveat that we know that Sharping can play both positions. So let's leave that there. And then at right guard, obviously, we got Alex Kappa there. And I think Cody Ford makes this roster as well. Jackson Kirkland was awful, so I don't think he's making it. And then right tackle, obviously, you got Jonah there. We know Lyell doesn't count right now.
Yeah, so we'll put Lyell down here on.
This is where I think you could probably put like Deontay Smith in. I think Deontay makes the roster. I don't think that there's any question about it. Now, obviously, we don't know if what the extent of his shoulder injury, I believe it is. So let's see. I think they go with that, and I think that they try to find a lineman that gets cut, similar to the vein of Max Sharping, where they add in somebody else for depth.
Right.
So I think that's what I've got them at.
Yeah, this is 9. They're usually around 10, and I think they'll use the waiver wire, like you said. I think it's a great point to kind of fill this room out. But that's obviously you also have Lyle Collins coming back too, so that could be your number 10.
And don't forget, Lyle can play guard as well. Like Lyle can play guard and tackle, so he's a guy that can fit at either one of those positions if something ends up happening.
All right, so we'll look at the edge now. This is both sides here. We already had one cut already with Terrell Basham getting released. Yep. Obviously, Hendrickson and Hubbard are our starters.
Yep.
We think Ossai is healthy enough to play, right?
Yep. Ossai, and then Miles Murphy's going to make it. And then I think Cam Sample's also a lock there. I don't really know about Jeff Gunter. I think they feel like they could probably stash him on the practice squad at this point.
Yeah, I would assume they could.
Raymond Johnson played amazing, but I think they feel the same about him. So I would go – I think they keep 5. I think they keep 5 for now because it could be – I think they keep 5. I'm trying to think about this. Usually they keep 6. Let's see.
This is another one where we could see some potential movement, through waiver wires
I think that they would opt to go the waiver wire route in that situation. So I'm going to say that they're going to keep 5 with the caveat that they could look at waivers to say, is there somebody else out there that they could potentially pick up?
Okay. So defensive tackle, we're looking at DJ Reader, DJ Hill,
Zach Carter. I think those 3 are locks, right?
Right. Now it's
Josh Tupou. I think is also
Tufele.
Tupou and Tufele I would keep because I feel like
to go 5 here.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with 5 there. Let's go with 5 there.
Linebacker. This is, traditionally 5 to 6.
Yeah, so I think you can keep Jermaine Pratt, Logan Wilson, Kim Davis-Gaither, and Marcus Bailey. After that is where it gets interesting because I'm not sure if Joe Bocci is worth keeping on the roster. I think if they have 4 linebackers, I think they can get by with that. So I'm going to go with just 4 linebackers.
Okay. Corner.
All right. Corner. This is going to be a fun one. So obviously we know Cheeto, we know CTB, we know Mike Hilton, we know DJ Turner. I feel like we know Jalen Davis as well. I think DJ Ivy is also going to make it. So I think
There's 6 right there. Sidney Jones, kind of the odd man out in favor of Ivy, maybe.
What are we looking at from a roster number side?
All right, so let's say we went 6 here, right?
Yep. So 6.
We still have the safeties. We know that means that we could fit 5 safeties.
5 safeties. Okay. Actually, you know what? I like this. So let me see. 6 corners with a caveat that 2 guys can only play in the slot with Hilton and Davis.
Yeah.
I think Sidney Jones still makes it. I think Sidney Jones is veteran. Yeah, because you can't throw DJ Ivy out there right now because he's never, in the event that you had to. So I'm going to throw Sidney Jones in there. I really wanted, what I was thinking here was actually keeping 5 safeties with Michael Thomas, the veteran, being that guy. But it just seems like he knows that he might not make the roster with him
his time is
giving
up, really.
Tyson his number, right? Like that was him actually giving him the jersey. So did Tyson want his jersey number?
I don't know. I don't know that it was. I think he just maybe gave him his physical jersey. I don't know that
Gave
he
him
actually,
his actual jersey. Okay. All right.
yeah.
No, that's cool.
So
All right.
this
So
is Hill, and this is
Hill,
Scott
no
and
Nick
Battle.
Scott. We know that
and
Nick Battle's there. We know that Tyson Anderson's there. Yep. So that gives us our 4. I think that is the closest to your roster.
So that's that's Michael Thomas, the veteran special teamer. So
he joins the coaching staff. That's what I'm going to say. He's going to join the coaching staff. I think it'll be similar to Huber last year, right? Like Kevin Huber, at one point wasn't on the roster, but was still around the building. So
Sure.
I think that's what you'll get with Michael Thomas. The interesting thing, though, so we got Stanley Morgan there. See, what I was going to say is you could technically get rid of Stanley Morgan.
You could lose Browning to bring Michael Thomas back.
You could lose Browning. You could lose Stanley Morgan because if I'm not mistaken, I think, Michael Thomas is a special teams captain, right? That's his specialty. That's what he does. I haven't obviously watched film on this, but I think he's actually a better special teamer than Stanley Morgan would be in terms of their meaning to the special team. So I think you could do that. Let's do this, man. Let's take Stanley Morgan off of the roster, man, and let's put Michael Thomas in there because we need some special teams. I don't want them to think there's no special teams love. Wait, hold on. We may have too many people because we're not counting our kicker and our punter.
Oh, no, they were already factored in.
Oh, they're already on there. Okay, yeah. Okay, cool.
So then that's
obviously. Yeah, man, bring me Michael Thomas back, bro. Bring me Michael Thomas back. I think that they
obviously you have the rookie Robbins in over Chrisman.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
53 right there.
Yeah, I think that's the roster, man. Like I would expect if it comes down to special teams, like Anton is saying in the comments, they're gonna pick Michael Thomas, I think, over Stanley Morgan. So let's take Stanley Morgan out of there. Let's get him out.
Done. Oh. I think he's on there, but
yeah, it's still 7. So I think without Morgan, I think it's 6 receivers instead. Yeah. You know what's funny? Like nobody's even talking about Trent Taylor. Everybody realizes that his time is over.
Yeah, they basically drafted
and then that goes to 5. Yep.
They basically drafted a more talented and athletic version of him in Charlie Jones.
Right.
Younger.
Exactly. Somebody said no long snapper.
Oh.
Cal Adamitis.
They're right.
Uh-oh. So that means somebody's going.
Yeah.
All right. So if somebody is going in this situation, I think it's probably Jake Browning. Jake Browning gets the axe because I think they feel like they could stash Jake Browning on the practice squad and he'd be there. So if that's the case, keep 2 quarterbacks. Browning goes to practice squad.
And they gave 2 starts to Browning, but you still think the allure of the veteran in Simeon is.
Yeah, I think that's what it's going to come down. Like if Jake Browning had NFL starts on his resume, I think it'd be his job no matter what. But you got to think about that. Like he's never played in an NFL game. How does he, prep for that? What does he teach Joe? He doesn't have anything to offer Joe from experience. I mean, Trevor Simeon's been playing for a while. So I would say that it's going to be that part of it. Now, unless there's a veteran out there that gets cut, like let's just say Joe Flacco or something like that. I think that they would cut Trevor Simeon for Joe Flacco because they know Joe Flacco has experience and they know that he can essentially teach Joe any of the stuff that he's been up against. And Trevor has 33 NFL starts, so that's got to count for something. But yeah, I think that's it, bro.
Nice. Nicely done. So we'll see. We'll check back and see how close we were. And you sort of alluded to, I want to get to the next topic, and you sort of alluded to it with, speaking of the quarterback position.
Yeah.
Which potential cuts around the NFL do you think could help improve the Bengals roster? There was a list that went out over the weekend, and I retweeted some names that I thought off of it. But to me, Marcus Mariota is a no-brainer if he becomes available.
Yeah, I think if Marcus Mariota is out there, you definitely bring him in. Will Greer is a guy, not many starts, but actually has had starts that I would probably consider as well. And then you kind of talk about Mike White. If Mike White's out there, I'm all over that. Like if Mike White gets cut in Miami, I'm definitely looking at him. But I think you want to look for somebody like a Cooper Rush maybe, but I think Cooper's probably staying there. You want to find somebody that's actually been able to get on the field and have some experience. And so I think that they'll definitely be looking at that. Some people talk about Cam Newton. The only thing that I would say is Zach has kind of made it clear that they're looking for a specific type of quarterback.
I don't know if the ship has sailed on his career. I mean,
yeah,
I know Zim loves him, man. Zim is all in on Cam Newton. You're not getting a fraction of the Cam Newton from,
Yeah, I don't think he's the same Cam anymore. I think he's still better than. I agree with him that fraction of Cam is still better than Jake Browning and Trevor Siemian. But I don't think that he's the backup that you need. I would just keep a close eye on the cuts. Who knows who you could find out there, but you need somebody that you can actually depend on. And I don't think that they have anyone that they can actually depend on this roster. I don't care if you got Jake Browning making the roster or if you have Trevor Siemian. Neither one of these guys are guys that you can count on. So I'd definitely be all over any quarterback that's out there that would be competent. One that's interesting, and I want to know your thoughts on this because I don't know how I feel about it. Mason Rudolph.
Oh, okay. Oh, God.
But here's the thing with Mason Rudolph. I know it sounds crazy. I think Mason Rudolph is personally trash. I know from covering him on AFC North Talk, he has been better in recent history. But the one thing I think that you would get with Rudolph is intel on the Steelers offense. Not that you need it because it's trash, but anything that they're doing that's new this year, you would have kind of a little bit of an upper hand on what they're doing because obviously he's the quarterback. He has to know about that offense. But how do you feel about Mason Rudolph?
I would say no at all costs. Like, I don't know if it's just from my disdain for what, the team he's played for, but I don't see any redeeming quality on the field, off the field at all with Mason Rudolph. He's been given opportunities before they drafted Kenny Pickett and didn't really do anything with it. I mean, I guess Deontay had a nice year with them, but in the opportunities he's got, he has shown me nothing. I would rather start Jake Browning, honestly, or find something. I think the biggest part of this discussion is probably going to leads us into the biggest topic of the day for us. Is, will Joe Burrow be under center week 1 versus the Browns? Now, before I get to what I think is going to happen there, let's just say I think that he's not, and I have to go find somebody to be under center week 1 versus the Browns. I think a guy like Mariota or I don't even know Will Grubb, but I think a guy with Mariota's experience, they could tailor an offense in 2 weeks or just under 2 weeks and get him ready to play a game. I
think so. Let's play devil's advocate. If the situation was that Joe Burrow wasn't going to play, I would have traded for a backup quarterback. I think that they would have did like a move like the Trey Lance deal or something similar to like what the Cardinals did with trading for the Browns backup quarterback in a situation where they feel like they actually have to put someone in. I think even though I like Mariota, I think that there's better options out there that you could start, like a Gardner Minshew. Hey, you want a 5th rounder for Gardner Minshew? I'll take him over started Marcus Mariota at that point. I think now if you do go the free agent route, I agree with you. I think Mariota, if he is out there, is probably the best guy available just because he was a starter last year. All those starts that he had for Tennessee, he's been on several different teams, has obviously shown that he can play in different systems. The only thing that scares me, though, is the way that he played. I saw a lot of Falcons fans just trashing him, talking about how bad he was just as a thrower of the football. So I still think, though, he could get you in position to win a game. So, I would either do that or I would probably trade for someone if that
The weapons on offense, in all fairness, the weapons on offense here in Cincy compared to what he was dealing with in Atlanta are, other than Kyle Pitts, who.
Well, he had Kyle Pitts, he had Drake London. He obviously he missed Calvin Ridley because of the gambling incident.
Nice players, but he didn't have. I mean, he had Honda Civics. He has Rolls Royce. You know what I mean? If he came here, he's like a Honda Civic's going to get you where you need, and if you put the right,
he had like a '90s Lexus. The way that with a rookie Drake London and Kyle Pitts in an off year. So I'm with you. Jacoby Brissett. I definitely would make a call too if he wasn't playing. But all in all, I think Joe Burrow's there week 1. Man, I think the fact that they never traded for a backup told you from day one, like they expect Joe to come back. They got good news from the medical team, and obviously they haven't shown any signs of panic in there. So I think Joe's back under center week 1 against the Browns. I love the thought that we kind of keep it this mystery as kind of gamesmanship against the Browns, so that the Browns still think that they don't know whether or not Joe's going to be there, even though I would think that they would prep like Joe's going to be there, but they don't know what they expect, I think, without Joe being there.
Yeah, it's hard. It's you can't help but sort of in the back of your mind be like, is he taking it easy on the training camp and the preseason because he has a potential contract extension and he had a little bit of an injury scare and he doesn't want to have an even bigger injury scare. Not that really it should affect that in any way, but I'm sure, there's a lot of business people in his ear and maybe telling him.
Yeah, I just don't think Joe Burrow's that type of guy, right? I think he's a team first guy. Whether the business is what it is, I think he's a guy that loves playing football, and he's a guy that loves being there for his teammates. And I think he kind of sets, the lead by example, because I think, T. Higgins, who's also in a contract situation, right? I think if he saw Joe Burrow do that, he'd be like, well, why am I playing? If
right.
Joe's not going to play, why would I play? So I think, I think Joe's just being smart about it. And I think what Jamar Chase said is true. If you do feel like you should be out, which technically going by the numbers of what they say with this injury, Joe actually could have returned to practice, I believe 2 days before we played the Commanders. Sorry for saying that. So I think he's probably just taking that extra time, like Jamar kind of said, just to make sure it's not a lingering thing. So, I think if this guy only has 1 week of practice, I think he'd be good to go. I think Zach Taylor even said all he needs is 1 practice to be ready. So I think as long as they get him out here with 2 weeks to go, you'll probably see him.
You think we see him on the field? Do you think we see him on the field on Monday?
I personally think so. Now, I don't know like the logistics, if it's open to the public or whatnot. I would think that you would see him, tomorrow on the field, or maybe even a week from tomorrow. I think he's on the field working out, going through everything, because obviously he's got to get his connection with Irv Smith and some of the new guys, obviously get back to throwing and getting that chemistry with the Migos, just so they, it's obviously there, but, it's been some time. So, I think that gives him the best. I think like Ohio Lakers 513 is saying Tuesday, Wednesday at the latest. I think he's back this week.
Yeah, that would be amazing. That would,
I'm not a doctor, but I think he's going to be back this week.
I think that would allow a lot of us to take a big exhale.
I think the contract for me, bro, the T. Higgins contract and the Joe Burrow contract, I think I'm more thinking about, does that get done before the season? So we don't have a situation to like how it was with Jesse Bates where that contract was affecting his play, right? Like, not saying that it would for T, but I remember that being a thing. It's like, why isn't Jesse Bates playing like Jesse Bates? Who is this guy? And he didn't really turn it on until the playoffs, right? So I just wouldn't want that lingering in the background because obviously with this locker room, they're so tight. It would just be dope and a huge sigh of relief to get that Joe Burrow and T. Higgins 5-year extension. Like that would, bro. The ops are going to be in shambles if that happens, man. I'm just going to tell you that right now.
I think we all thought, and not just the fans, but national media, everybody kind of thought, oh, well, once the Herbert domino fell and sort of laid the groundwork for the next big deal, it just was kind of a matter of time. And fast forward 3 weeks later, we're still kind of going, all right, well, what's
and I
going
think
on?
for me, I always thought about it like if I'm Joe Burrow and I'm in this window and I want to make it work, I'm not signing immediately without T. Higgins extended too. If I want T. Higgins and Jamar Chase to be here, I would put the pressure on the front office to get the T. Higgins deal done and make that contingent on me signing my extension. That's what I would think he would do is like, hey, you guys want me in Cincinnati? Let's get T. Higgins done, which I think whatever Joe Burrow says he wants from the Bengals front office, Joe Burrow gets. So I think that's it. And then the other thing is this, like, I do think that Joe should take the 10-year deal. I don't think that he should take the Justin Herbert deal, which is short term. I think that he should take a 10-year deal because that will allow them to manipulate the cap over that time period and keep guys like T. Higgins, move cap for a Jamar Chase whenever he needs his money, move cap for a DJ Reader in the future if you want to do something to keep him. Maybe even if he wants to keep Tyler Boyd, he could do something there. So, like, for me, I think it was a different situation because I think Joe really wants to sign that Mahomes type deal because that's the guy that you're competing with. You're not competing with Justin Herbert, and that's no disrespect to Justin Herbert. He's a good quarterback, but you're competing with the Chiefs and with Patrick Mahomes because they're going to counter and use that to their advantage against us. And that's just what it is. So I think number 9 has the big picture. I think Ocho kind of alluded to that. Like they both have their eyes on something bigger this year, and they're thinking about the next 10 years and not the next 4 or 5.
Yeah. I mean, I think we would have seen a lot of this without the injury this preseason, a lot of Joe with sunglasses and a hat on. I think, they kind of flirted early, Zach saying, everything's on the table, everyone. But, I think what he's shown us without any of the starters playing all preseason, he clearly has a philosophy and I don't think we would have seen Joe out on the field in the preseason. If Joe does not practice until the week prior to week 1, and we were saying he'll be under center, do you have any nerves that there could be a slow start, maybe similar to what we saw against Pittsburgh last year? Is there any like knocking the rust off type stuff the first couple weeks?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I consider myself a realist, so I would say that, there's definitely concern. He hasn't, picked up a ball in a while. He had to deal with this injury similar to him getting the operation last year. So, sure. There's also the fact that the offensive line didn't play with each other. The one thing that I will say, though, is technically at least 3 of the guys have played with each other, technically 4. Obviously, they played with Jonah at left tackle. But there's not the same situation where these guys never took a snap with each other. And you also have to think about in that camp, Lyle wasn't even healthy enough to line up with those guys during some of those reps at the time, right? So I think it's a little different there. But obviously, for this to be against a team like Cleveland that matches up really well with us, yes, there's a concern there. But I think there's also a concern on their side. Deshaun Watson didn't look good at all last season. I don't care what people tell you now. He finally had a pretty decent showing, I think, in this last preseason game, but that was against, future plumbers. So let's see what that looks like week 1. But, I would think both sides would have reason to have some concern. But I think the Bengals, they know what they want to do. And the fact that Joe is probably sitting back, learning what teams are going to do, If they want to run too high shell, I'm sure he's focused on that. I don't think that there's going to be as many surprises. So hopefully he can have a smooth transition. And from my understanding of what Cleveland and Jim Schwartz likes to run, he likes to run a lot of cover 1 and a lot of cover 3. He doesn't really change much off of that, doesn't really blitz that much. So, I think they'll be ready for it.
Yeah. A lot of familiarity, obviously, on the field with a division opponent week 1, and a lot of our own familiarity with our friends at Midwest Best Barbecue, and we're throwing it back.
Shout out to Midwest Best Barbecue, located in Loveland, Ohio, 669 Justice Court. They actually just had Wing Week last week in Cincinnati. There were a lot of people that stopped by, grabbed them some Grippo wings, grabbed them some Uno wings, grabbed them some G-Funk wings. So don't miss out. It's football season. Those wings are killer. Some of the best wings in the city. Not only do they have the wings, the barbecue is slapping as well. You can get the barbecue sliders, whether it's brisket, whether it's pulled pork, whatever you like. They've got that with the wings. They also have the sweet tea. I like to mix it with the lemonade. I like my Arnold Palmers from there. They also have ice cream. Basically, if you're trying to eat healthy, you might not want to, but guess what? They got brisket salad. They have brisket salad too with the vinaigrette dressing and all of that. It's hidden. What do they not have at Midwest Best Barbecue?
Do they have boneless wings? Brandon Murph wants
They
to
have
know.
it all, man. They have it all. They even on select days bring back the ribs for those who like the slabs of ribs and stuff like that. I think Zim actually got some when we were there. It was so good. His wife didn't hit the gritty, but she hit a little jug after she took a bite out of that food. The macaroni and cheese, amazing. Brisket fries slap. Get over to Midwest Best Barbecue. If you think it's hype, look on Twitter, look on social media. I guarantee you myself, if you go there, the food is going to be amazing.
Wow. That's all you need to say right there. I can't wait. I've never been able to.
My mouth is watering right now. I'm just thinking about it.
Well, that's going to bring the show to an end. We really appreciate everyone rocking with us tonight on a Sunday night. Any final thoughts, Ace, before we get off the air here?
Nah, man. I feel I'm channeling my inner Zim, and I'm like just ready for the season. Ready to hit these goals that we've created. I feel like there's been a lot of momentum leading up to this season. I think the Bengals can really get out to a really good start. Obviously, we'll be analyzing that. Can't wait until we go back into doing, twice a week. It's starting to feel like the regular season, man. So with that being said, please be sure to support us, man. Make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. We'll be coming at you guys 2 times a week during the season. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments and stuff like that. We appreciate the super chats. Also follow the Wincinnati Pod at Wincinnati Pod on Twitter. We'll definitely be tweeting out some cool graphics and stuff like that, including how the Ravens overpaid for linebackers and the Bengals didn't. And then we'll also be talking about stuff in Twitter Spaces. So follow Zim at Zim Hude. Follow me at New Stripe City. And of course, we got dope merch coming. So Zim has his line coming back out with the Burrow babies. He's got the Fear of the Orange Planet, so stay tuned for that. I've got some things in the works as well. I don't want to spoil too much, but it may actually be somewhat coaching related, so stay tuned for that. We've got that merch coming. You can get that at newstripecity.com. You can get Zim's at zimhude.com. And then if you need to decorate your man cave or your fan cave, definitely be sure to hit up the guys Sovah at Fan Cave Pro. Make sure you get that right. So yeah, bro, I'm just ready for the season. How about you?
The off season's over. That's it. It's a wrap on the off season. Everything from here on out is real football, and we're ready to go. And I'm ready to go. The Wincinnati pod, the Wincinnati channel, we are all ready to go. We are ready to bring you the best coverage on the internet. So stay with us. It's going to be fun. We're going to have a great year. And Ace, just hit him with a yes, sirski.
Yes, sirski.
It's an exciting time to be a Bengals fan.
I'm Ace.
We got a special show as always.
The voice of the Bengals. Dan Ford, Willie Anderson, Corey Dillon.
The name of this thing is called Wincinnati, and I'm not going to stop.
Talk to us about that roller coaster season.
I'm still gonna give you the same AJ.
I'm gonna work as hard as I can to be the best.
Always working ever since I met y'all, boy.
I gotta get you a top 5 receiver.
Better, man. It was good. Watch out for us.